Welcome everyone to the watercolor grapes painting. It's so good to see the usual suspects and then the new faces. My name is Anita Thompson, and I will be your instructor this evening. I'm going to spotlight the video right now, so you should be able to see it larger on your screen. If you don't, you want to make sure that you are not on gallery view and that you are on speaker view. And we're going to get started. So this is a watercolor. It's funny because I've had quite a few people think that it was colored pencil right up until today. It is just a very dark watercolor, using the watercolor quite thickly, which I thought would be fun to do with the grapes. So we are going to get started with the drawing portion of it. So the first thing you'll need is just a basic pencil with an eraser. We're using 9 by 12 paper here. You're welcome to use smaller and you're welcome to use bigger. But we're just going to get drawing on the grapes now. So if there are any questions, you can put those in the chat. As I mentioned, this is being recorded. I will send this out to Mimi afterward, and then she'll send it when she's able to. And it will be on my YouTube channel hidden for a little while, and then I usually release it to the public after about a month. But if you have the link, you'll be able to see it. Okay, so let's get started. Oh, let me let Marlene in. And we're going to get started here. And okay. Hi, Marlene. We are just getting started.
Okay, sorry I'm late.
No worries. I'm going to mute you just because we're recording, and you'll get a copy of the recording at some point. Okay, so we're starting off with our pencil and eraser. We're going to be drawing very lightly. This is a watercolor. So we're going to make sure that our grapes are centered on our paper because we do have some blue surrounding it. And so we're going to start off at the top, and we're going to start off with the stem. I'm going to be drawing darker so that you're able to see it, but the way that you should be drawing is that you should still be able to see your lines, but they should be very light. So let's get started with the stem. So we're going to curve that stem. Let me adjust my camera here. So we're going to curve that stem. And basically, let me go in a little bit closer as well. It's going to curve to the right, and then we have a bit of a piece of it kind of coming off to the right as well. And we are going to start creating the shape of the leaves. But I just want to extend this part of it up here a bit more. And we're going to start first with the grapes, and then we will fill in the leaves, especially since they are behind and in front of our grapes. So we're going to get started first with a general shape that we want to construct as our grape, the total grape shape. So if I were to do that, I'm going to sort of create an outside shape of what I want my grapes to look like. It's kind of going to look like a pepper, but I promise it's going to be grapes. And I just want to give that overall shape. So again, it actually kind of looks like an upside down squash as well. But this should be very light, just like I mentioned your grapes should be. So now that we have the shape that we want, we're now going to start off with our grapes. And if you take a look, To make it look realistic, we have grapes that are happening, behind each other. So sometimes you can only see a portion of that grape. And then sometimes we have an almost full size grape, like right here. But mainly, they are either obscured by a leaf or another section of grapes. So we're going to get started at the top. And so, what you can do here again, also, you want to make sure that you're doing it lightly because you may want to change the shape or actually, um, you know, add some more. So, I'm starting off with this one at the top, and I'm going to add one here. And as I'm adding, I'm going to erase the general shape, the outside shape that I have. I'm going to adjust my this part here, and I'm going to keep going. So yours may not look exactly like mine, and that's okay. Like you may decide to start adding grapes on top. For instance, like right here, I'm going to add another grape. I will go slow enough though, so that if you do want to copy my exact grapes, you can do that. So we're also going to be creating the leaves that later on, the one on the right especially, will be on top of the grapes or, sort of in front of it. So I'm just basically going off of the general shape that I want. This can change for you, but I'm starting to fill in parts that will look like it could be interesting, and as if the grapes are in a bunch. So as you see, I'm kind of starting to go off on the right here, but then I'm going to sort of fill in and move a little more towards the middle and the left. And so sometimes my grapes are a little bit more round, and then other times you can see that they're a little more oval shaped. They are mostly oval shaped. So here I am filling in some more here. And remember to also show that there are some underneath as well. We're all going to be in the mood for grapes after this. I remember teaching, I don't know if some of you remember this, we did a watercolor and colored pencil cookie a few years ago, chocolate chip cookie. And boy, was I in the mood to make chocolate chip cookies. And so I did at like 10 o'clock at night. So keep going and filling up your grapes here. At least the grapes are a healthier choice later at night. Sorry, John Paul, I will slow down. So remember, you can also, if you want to create your own grapes, and they don't have to look exactly like mine, you can, but I will slow down, absolutely. Yeah. In the meantime, I'm going to start erasing the lines, or the line that we created for the shape. And as you're doing that, and if you do that, you will then be able to see, where there are holes, where you may have to create maybe one more grape. So like right here, I'm going to make one that you can still see a little bit of some separation here. I try to keep them mostly together, but that's not always how grapes happen. You also want to change the position of them just a little bit. So see how I changed this one to be a little more angled. And you especially want them to break the border of the shape that the overall shape you created. So for instance, like this one here is breaking the border, right? This was where my original shape is. So I'm going to break the border of that and have one hanging over here because it looks good composition wise. But now you want to do that in probably one or two other places as well. Okay, I just made this one that is sticking out a bit. It's a little bit flatter as far as its angle to the left. And so again, as I'm going through, I am erasing that border line so that you can now see that your grapes are in a bunch. And if you need to add or subtract any, you can do that. So here's another grape. Here, we're filling it up. And sometimes, you'll go in and you'll be using, or you'll be able to see just most of the grape, but not all of it, like you see with this one right here. And then as you're getting closer toward the bottom, you're going to have more that you're going to be seeing because they're kind of hanging. You're going to have more that you only see a portion of dangling kind of in the back of the grapes that are up front. So for instance, I'm going to start that about right here. You can see that starting to, create sort of grapes that are not fully shown. I'm also angling the grapes now to kind of go this way. And then I like to have one single grape that is dropped a little bit lower than the rest right here. Now, again, you don't have to have that, but I think it looks good as far as just compositionally. So now I'm just going to erase the other lines and take a look and see if I want to erase any or change any shapes. I'm going to erase that one. Because remember, we're going to add leaves. Let's see. I'll erase that one and change the shape a little bit. You don't have to do this. Something I like to do, just so some of them are kind of sticking out a little more. Okay. I'm gonna add one more up here. I think that'll kind of balance it out a little bit. I'll add two more. All right. Now, oh, wow, John Paul, that looks awesome and delicious. Okay, let's get to our leaves. So we're going to start off first on the right-hand side, and we're going to make that leaf. So we're going to make the general shape of the leaf. And here again, you're going to want to go lightly. I like to kind of create the section in the middle. And then this is where you want to start drawing on top of your grapes, having that leaf kind of go a little bit in front of your grapes. So I've done this here. So here I am erasing the grapes. And now making sure that the leaf is on top of, in a sense, on top, in front of, I should really say, more in front of. It's our first leaf, and I like to add the vine after as well. Now you can add or subtract the amount of leaves as you see fit. The same with the grapes. I'm still looking at some of my grapes and going, I'm gonna make that one a little bit less. Just fixing my overall shape here. There we go. And now we're going to go over to the left and finish off with our leaves there. So the leaves on the left, you can only see, portions of them. So we have one here. And we have another one right in front of it. And then we have a few more, 2 more down here. And I kind of took liberty with these leaves. So if you want to make your leaves a specific way and different from mine, please do. You want to draw more vines than I have, please do that as well. I am just a guide, but you can, this is your piece, so you can get creative with it. So I'm kind of drawing the outline to the leaves here. I'm going to show that up close just so you can see the shape. So here again, if you want to add a little more of a vine coming down, like this might look kind of interesting. Have a little more vine. I'm going to do that that's a little different than my original. You don't have to. But at this stage, you want to make sure that your lines are light, because our next step is going to be finally the painting part. So you want to make sure that your lines that you've drawn are lighter. Oh, sure. Yeah. Take your time, Kim. And thank you for letting me know. Absolutely. Yep. Keep drawing your leaves. I will give everyone a minute or so. I'm going to take a look here and see what I want to change on mine. And again, just lightening up the lines so that they don't show through. Of course, this is a thicker drawing as far as the paint application, so they won't show through as much, except for the leaves. You want to be sure that you definitely have your leaf lines lighter, because we'll be using yellow and green on those. Okay, I'll give everyone another minute. I mentioned in the beginning, if you wanted to use a smaller brush for some of the details, you're very welcome to. My brush is a size 8, so you can use between a 6 to an 8, I would say, for your bigger brush. So that's the size of that. Basically, I'm able to comfortably create the circular parts of the grapes. And I'm also very comfortably able to create inside the leaves and even the stem. But if I want to go in with, a little more thinner color, especially where the leaves are concerned when we create the veins, I think I might grab a smaller one, even though I did use generally this one brush. But go ahead and grab a smaller one if you have it. somewhere around like a size 2 to, somewhere smaller. Like, let me grab one over here. Let's see what this is. And as I always say, it's difficult because each of the brands, it doesn't carry over. The same size doesn't carry over. So, for instance, this is a size 4 brush right here, and this one is an 8. And I don't feel like it's that much bigger, but they're two different brands. So, I would say if you have a smaller detail brush, you can use that, whatever that size is. I'm just suggesting between a 2 and 2, 3, or 4, somewhere around there. But we're going to start off with the general brush. And so what we're going to start off with is the background. And so the background is a lighter shaded blue. And so depending on what color blue you have in your set, mine is like almost like a baby blue, like a very light blue. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it down on my plastic part of my watercolor palette, and I'm going to mix water with it because what we want to do is make it light at first, and then we can go darker. So this is blue. You are welcome to mix in a little green if you want to give it more of like a turquoise. The color that I have in this set, and the art kits that I did for the library, they're more like a little bit of a royal blue, but then when you water it down, obviously it gets lighter. So we're going to start and create some watery blue, and almost as if we're creating clouds. So I have applied the water to the paint, and not so much on the paper. So this is more of applying it, but then you can add some water to the already applied paint on your paper to start spreading it. I'm going to adjust my camera here so you can see a bit closer. So see, if I take my water with my brush and I start to shade with my brush and pull the color in. Oops, excuse me. I like to go a little bit darker with the application when it gets closer to the grapes and the plant, or the leaves, I should say. And then I get a little lighter in the parts that are in between. So almost like I'm kind of tracing around on the outside of the leaves. And then I start taking the water and adding it to the already put down blue. I also like to make a border that is a little bit almost smoky. And the way I do that is by bringing this design out to the edge and then making sure there's more water applied on the edge parts so that it will kind of fade. So we are first applying the background. I'm going to go around everything. You can always go back and make things darker. I'm kind of liking the lightness of this background so far. A little more blue here. And then I like to really fade it out as it gets toward the bottom of the grapes so that it is almost the white of the paper. But that's just me. Again, you can do it a little differently if you want to keep it, even throughout the whole painting. That's just something I enjoyed doing with this one. So I apply more water and I'm swirling my brush, as you can see, in circles in order to get that um, sort of faded out look. I go back and I apply some of the blue that's on my palette, but I water it down as I get it to the page. And you can sort of see that as it's descending, you can see that it's getting lighter. The color is getting lighter. Kind of relaxing. So the application of the watercolor paint in this one is a little bit more heavy, as a lot of you, have remarked that it looked much more like colored pencil. Um, and I thought that would be really interesting to do. So here's where, if you want to go back to some parts right up against where maybe your leaves are, I'm going back now and I'm just adding a few spots of blue that are a little bit darker, just to kind of, highlight some parts. So you don't have to outline, the whole shape, but, maybe adding a little bit of some shadowing outside of the grapes, on the sky side. I kind of thought of this as, they were sort of kind of dangling from, a branch. So you can see the sky behind. And again, just add either light or dark to the spots that you want to highlight. Try to do it on both sides. What you do on one side, maybe do one or two on the other side. Spots, as far as if you're, making it darker so that it looks a little more balanced. And I think I'll do one more here. And you can always go back later on and make it a little darker if you like. Okay. And again, to fade it out, you would just add more water to the edge of your border meaning that your paint border, you can kind of push the water, extend it from where it stops by using water. And you get this lovely smoky, kind of a smoky effect or cloud-like effect. Okay. So watercolor is obviously best done in layers. We start off with light layers first. And then for this one, we're going to get a lot thicker than we have in the past, but we always still start off with lighter layers. So the first layers for the leaves is going to be yellow. And so putting some yellow on the first part of the leaves is the first part of the layering. I like to leave some white for some lighter part of the leaf. So you can see here, I've left it blank, unpainted over here on this leaf. Imagining that some light is getting to it. And I like to do that for a lot of them. So I kind of dabble in some of the yellow, maybe going a little darker towards where it's up against the leaves. And then I either go a little bit lighter with some water or I leave spots of the paper showing. So I'm going to show that up close so you can see what I mean. So see that there? Some here. We'll be filling it more with some green mixed with yellow, and then finally a little bit of bluish green. But first, we are adding the first layer, which is the yellow, the lightest part. We'll let that dry, and then we're going to go into the grapes because, again, you get one layer down, you go to another part of the painting, and you get the second layer down, or the first layer in the grape case. So with this big leaf over here on the right, I like to have the yellow be a little bit darker in the center of the leaf, and then kind of at the top of the rounded parts of the leaf, and then in the middle, a little bit lighter. So I'm going to take my water, and then sometimes around the edges, I like to make the edges a little bit darker. So if you want, you could even kind of outline them from the inside. Okay, so that's our first layer of yellow. I'll give everybody some time. Because our next step is using our purple. Um, and we're going to be creating a light application of purple. So here's my purple here. So I'm going to get that ready. And what we're going to do is we're going to go around to each grape. And that's going to be the first application. So the grapes are purple, purple and blue, and also some red. So our first application is going to be just our purple. Now this is more of a little bit of, it's not quite a plum purple. I would say it's sort of an average purple, not a like an average purple. And so we're going to apply the same logic that we do with the leaves. So we're going to start off with a little bit of color in the grape. And then we want to remember that grapes are translucent, even though they have some nice color. So I'm going to take that and then I'm going to make sure that I paint, kind of spread the paint in certain spots and then leave room for there to be some light there. So maybe this one is going to be like that. And so that's the way you want to kind of approach all of the grapes. So adding a little bit of some light, some light application of color. You can even make some even lighter by adding more water, not so much on the grapes, but on your palette by diluting it. And you're going to leave for now a spot of white or the white of the paper. And you're going to fill up all of the grapes by doing this. So usually the grapes that are underneath, it's usually darker, a darker color, right where they're resting underneath each other. That doesn't have to be the case right now, since we're just filling in the first layer, but we're going to keep that in mind. So you usually won't do a highlight right where the grapes are sort of connecting to each other. The highlight is usually on the outside. So again, right now, our first step is we're just putting a light layer on each of the grapes. And then we're going to go back and make certain sections of each grape darker. And we're going to build up each grape, but still keeping it be some, translucent. And take your time and have fun with each, circular shape. The other thing is that the parts in the middle of each grape, so there's going to be parts that are going to look like, it's sort of in the background. You can make those a darker purple for now. So for instance, here's one spot that I found that is too small for it to be the shape of a grape. But that means that there are grapes behind it. So I'm just going to make that spot a little bit darker than the rest for right now, just using the purple. We will be adding a little bit of black and, well, first red and blue later on. So just continue to fill up your grapes with our first layer. They should be starting to look a little bit more like grapes at this point, just by adding in this first layer. It's really fun to start adding in the other colors and seeing the grapes really start to look realistic. So this doesn't look so bad so far, but it will be a lot more vibrant when we start to add the other colors. Which we are. Oh, wow, John Paul, that looks beautiful. Nice job. Yep, keep going on the grapes. You want to fill up all of those grapes. I know it takes a while, so I'll give everybody some time to do that.
Go, John Paul.
You're like pumped too, Michael.
Let's be clear. The pump is on.
I love it. I love it. So for those that are, if you're finished your grapes at this point, you can start to kind of go in the middle, kind of outlining around those grapes and adding a little bit of the darker, a little bit of dark purple. For instance, right here, I did that where you would sort of still see, a little bit of some shadowing just from underneath. So that's your next step, just using the purple for now. Because our next step will be starting to add the darker shading to sort of where the grapes are coming in contact with each other. And for now, that is going to be the purple. So for those that are ready for the next step, we're going to start doing that. Keep going with the grapes. If you're still doing the first layer of the purple, keep going with that. But the second layer is going to be adding a darker application of your purple. Let me move this over here so you can see what I'm doing. So here's my purple here. And I'm going to use the tip of my brush. Now, this is where if you work better with a smaller brush, oh, wow, Michael, that looks incredible. Beautiful. I love how you're starting in with the green. That's another step too, that we're going to start with the leaves. After we apply this purple application, and you want to start off kind of at the sort of around where each of the grapes meet, sort of like you're outlining now with your purple. And then adding a little bit darker of the purple, usually towards the bottom of the grape. Not always, but we're definitely now outlining the grapes in the purple. But we're not coloring in the entire grape with this dark purple. As you can see here, I outline with it, but not coloring in using the dark purple because we want, darker shades at the bottom or one section of the grape, specifically where, as I mentioned, it's sort of either touching another grape. That's really kind of where. And then there are some in the background that you can actually make almost the whole thing dark, like this one right here. That's kind of peeping through. That one right there. So if it's easier for you to, um, do kind of create a bit of an outline on one side of the grape, specifically where it's touching another grape, you can do that and then wait to color it in. But I kind of do it all at once, going from, grape to grape. So shading and outlining at the same time. See, it's starting to look more realistic. After this application, we're going to let this one dry and we're going to go to the leaves and add their second color, which will be yellowish green. We're getting darker as we apply the layers. So those that are new on this call, my husband and I are going to Italy next. We're leaving on Monday, next Monday, in the evening for our 10-year wedding anniversary. And one of the places we'll be going is Tuscany. So I imagine that we'll see grapes there.
Sangiovese.
Nice. Oh, thank you, John Paul. Yes, grapes, wine. I'm excited to take pictures and to sketch. I've decided, obviously bringing a sketchbook, and I want to sketch at least one thing per day to kind of create sort of like a timeline of the trip every day. I'm hoping to sketch more, but I don't know. I know the museums take a long time, and that's okay. Yeah, I'll take pictures and then sketch in the evening back at the hotel.
Some people that I follow on
Mhm.
Instagram,
Yes.
they do exactly what you were saying. And then when
Yeah.
they come back, they make an art journal.
Yes.
So that each,
Good idea.
I mean, I don't know exactly how they do it, whether they've
Yeah.
probably got 12 million drawings or paintings from a particular day. So
Yeah.
maybe they pick out the one that is the highlight or something like that.
Yeah. You know what? You're right, Donna. I have seen that. I have seen people do that, like travel journals.
Yes.
That's what gave me the idea. Just in seeing other people's, you're right, on like Instagram, and I'm going, wow, that's really neat. I've never made one. Like I know they'll add things like words to it, like, oh, this morning we had I don't know, some very good coffee. I don't know, something like that. So I'm hoping the words will come to me.
Well, I'm sure they will.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for that. Um I've always wanted to do one, but I've never really traveled to a place where I wanted to do that. But this definitely calls for it.
Yeah, I sort of regret that a lot of my traveling was done before I got into art.
Yeah.
Of course,
Well,
I have pictures. I guess I could look at the pictures, but I don't know, it's not quite the same.
Yeah, I know what you mean. John Paul, I saw your grapes. They're lovely. So if you are finished with the second layering, we're going to now move on to the leaves. So again, the back and forth. You're welcome, John Paul. So this is now going to be, we're going to be adding some green, but mixing it with some yellow so that it's a yellowy green, and then we'll get darker. So here I am adding some green to my palette along with some yellow so that it's more of a lighter green. Now, if you have a lighter green in your palette, you're welcome to use that, kind of like almost like a lemony green. And at the same time, you can mix up another green as well that is going to be darker than that. So I have both of my greens right next to each other. So there's that yellowy green that we're going to add. Make it a little bit darker. And then the one next to it is a little more of the traditional green. And so with this, I like to start adding it. Starting in the middle again of this leaf in particular, and then creating lines of the color. So for instance, with this one, see, I get a little bit lighter here as I'm going towards the edge. Now I want to add bits of the color. Very much like if you were, using colored pencils and sort of coloring different greens in the leaf. So again, I tend to stick with, the darker colors being in the center of the leaf, because that's usually where the darker colors are because the leaf is bending. And then sometimes on the outer edges, like here. And again, still letting that yellow shine through. You can always go back and make it, darker. But it's a little harder to do when you've covered it up. So again, I like to start in the center of each one. And for this one here on the left, I'm actually making some of the veins, even though we'll go back and make it, with a little bit darker. But I kind of splotch on the color a little bit. Making sure that the yellow is still showing. And the leaves on the left, especially the one here on the left, is darker than the other three. The second one here is a little bit darker, but the darkest one really is this one. And so we will be really building that one up as far as the color, you know, the darker greens. And again, I use my, I really do use this regular, you know, the bigger brush for this. But if it helps you to switch to a smaller one that you have, please do so. See how I concentrate the darker, you know, the application of the green closer to the bottom of the leaf. And then it's a little lighter throughout. And as that, you know, your leaf is, the other parts of the leaves are drying, we're now going to start applying the darker green, which is really the regular green, and also mixing one more green, which is green and black to get a darker, more of a forest green. So again, you know, this next set of greens to apply to our leaves is a regular green. So I have it here, you know, here's my lighter green, that was the yellowy green, and now this is the regular green. And then next to the regular green, I'm going to mix in some black with that green so that it turns more of a kind of that forest green. Now, if you already have that green, you know, depending on what you're using at home, if you've got a darker green, you don't have to mix it like I do, or some of us that have the sets. This is, you know, kind of a generic set. So if you've got more colors, you know, use those. So once you have that mixed, again, the next step is now the regular green. And so going back in and kind of going around the same areas that we used for the darker green. So staying a little more towards the center of each leaf, and then also sometimes going along an edge of a leaf, like right here. I'm going to add, you know, a little bit darker to the edges of these two sections of the leaf. So we are now going back in with our regular green. So we are building up the color. You're going to be amazed in probably about 15 to 20 minutes. It's going to look so realistic. And again, this is just from building up the layers of color. But starting off having it be more translucent for this one is the key. The other thing is if you don't want yours as dark as mine or as thickly applied as mine, feel free to, you know, keep it lighter on the lighter side. That's okay too. So that's what the first leaf looks like with the application of the regular green. And so for instance, because these two on the left, these two leaves on the left are a little bit darker, I'm going to start applying a lot of the green to most of the section of the leaf. As you can see, I kind of take my green and I kind of push it around, still leaving some of the yellow exposed, but I'm starting to actually apply a little more paint than water, which is how you get that thickness of color, that buildup of color. I'm doing that for this leaf. You can see the application of color right here is much darker, much more like gouache. I don't know if anyone's ever used gouache before. Gouache is sort of in between the consistency of acrylic paint and watercolor. It's like a thicker watercolor is how I like to describe it. Maybe I'll do I have yet to create a program with gouache. So if that interests anybody, let me know in the comments at some point. You don't have to do it now as you're concentrating. So we're now going over, to each leaf and adding, a little bit darker the green. I like to add a little bit of, with this regular green, add a little bit to the edges of the leaf. Not outlining the entire leaf sections, but, certain portions of the leaf. And this is also where, if you decide you want something to be a little bit lighter, maybe you add a little more yellow to a section. We are going to add one more quick color, which is blue, on top of the dark parts of the green before we add the final lines. So I took my blue and I'm now applying it to some of the darker sections that I want to be darker. So for instance, those would be the veins, and the last part is we're going to add a little bit of some of the black mixed with the green to get some of those really dark areas. But this, the bluish green, which is just, I'm using blue on top of my green because it's still wet. And my blue, if it's coming out too blue, you can then mix it on your palette with green. But we are now, when you're ready, applying blue on top of the green that we just applied. And here again, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to cover exactly what you just did, but you can make some of that blue towards the center of each leaf and maybe, on some of the edges. So this is where you would use this in the parts that you want the leaves to be a little bit darker, the sections that you want a little darker. So maybe on the edge of one of the curved parts of the leaf, like right here, like I'm doing, I'm just adding a bit of some blue here. And maybe at the point of this one, and this is where I'm building up the color. It's looking very painterly as opposed to the ones we've done in the past that are a little lighter. Apply those to each leaf. Maybe just a little bit on certain ones. You know, the leaves that are darker are these that are on the left side. As you can see, it's starting to get more, you know, much darker. By the application of paint. And while that is drying, for those of you that are, you know, finished with that part, we're going to add brown to the stem, mostly on the right side of the stem and leaving, or I should say the branch, leaving a portion of it, usually the top portion of it, a bit of the white of the paper. So this is brown, and then we'll go over it in blackish brown. And that's what we want for our branch area. We want the underside of part of it to be darker. You know, and let's not forget our, you know, our vines here too. And even add a little bit of yellow to the lightened part of the branch areas. And then we're going to add some black mixed with brown to the smaller parts. So this is where, you know, if you are heavy-handed, you might want to use your smaller brush if you have it. Oh my goodness, that's beautiful. Helen, that is lovely. I knew it was colored pencil. You are the colored pencil queen, my dear. I love it. Beautiful. I know. I kind of want to do this in colored pencil one time too. Well, maybe.
Is our mint Helen?
Yes. Yes, that is Helen. Can you
Go
see?
Helen.
I know. Beautiful. She's so good with colored pencil. It's her specialty. Beautiful. I think we need to do something like this in colored pencil in the future.
It's what I have the supplies of, and I decided instead of getting all different kind of supplies, I'm going to try to work with one.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. That's great. That really expands how you think about doing it too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, beautiful, Michael, too. Gorgeous. So we're probably running about five minutes. Oh, yes, okay, Arlene, I love it. Yeah, I think a lot of people like colored pencil because I feel like it's an easier medium to work with. Some of you may not agree. I don't know. I think it's really neat, and you can do a lot of textural stuff with pencil. But um, I love anything that has to do with pencils and colored pencils. So I could be a little biased with that. So when you are ready and adding a little more of the dark to your branch, you're going to add some black or blackish brown, or again, if you have a different watercolor set and you have a darker brown that is close to, almost like a chocolate brown, you want to add some dark toward where it meets up with the grapes, and then along the one of the edges of each branch, so that there's a lighter side and a darker side. And I like to make the start of the little vines. I like to add some, a little bit of darker areas on parts of the brown vines here. So you see how I'm kind of skipping around, and as it's bending and curling, I make it a little darker. And we're about to add on our final coloring for the grapes. So let me tell you the colors that I mixed for the grapes. So a red and purple. So you're going to mix red with purple, and you're going to get a little more of like literally a wine color, right? Like we think of as wine. So a reddish purple here. Let me put my white paper towel against it. So you see that it's a little more on the reddish side. And you're going to start adding that to one section of each grape, mostly towards the darker areas. So where the grapes maybe meet.
Anita, say again what the colors are.
Oh, sure. So I mixed red and purple. So just the regular purple that you were using. And then unless, again, you have this, it's kind of a wine color, like a reddish, almost like a, maybe like a burgundy. I guess that's really a burgundy color that we're making. So if you happen to have that and you don't need to mix it, you can use it. But so here, and we're going to just quickly, so this is a kind of a quick, using it still with some water, going around each section of grape, and you're going to see how it's already starting to come alive, come to life a little more on mine as far as the layering. And our final part will be where we add just a little bit of tiny bit of blue, and then a little bit of black. But this is really, you can even extend some of that reddish purple, into another section of each of the grapes. But I tend to keep it closer to where, the darker parts are here. Let me mix a little more purple. And if you happen to get a color that is sort of in between both of those, use it, because grapes are different, different shades of purple, in one bunch. You know, sometimes you'll get one that's, you know, really more like a darker purple, and then one that's a little more like the reddish here. So I'm doing that too, especially as I'm getting more towards the bottom of the grapes. You know, and sometimes I just go in with a little more red on my brush. It's mixed in with the purple, but it comes out a little more reddish. And that's okay too. Can't wait to see these. I think these are going to just be magnificent. Oh, wow, John Paul. Very nice. Now, once you get that color on, you're going to go back in with some water on the tip of your brush. And you're going to soften those colors and fill in where we left the white. Now you can keep some of the white of the paper, but blend a little bit so that all those lovely colors that you just added are mixing a little bit together. Just softening just a little bit, blending a little bit. So see, I'm just going in, and again, this should be something quick too. What you're doing is you are creating a darker highlight, I should say. You're creating a darker highlight by just covering a little bit of the white of the paper that you've left so that it looks a little more gradual and it's going to look more realistic. So again, I just add a little bit of water to the tip of my brush and I push the watercolor that's already on there towards the white of the paper that's on the grape, each of the grapes. But I still leave, you know, you still want to leave some white of the paper showing for the highlight. You know, and you can go back in and splash a little more red where you want to see it. And this is where, you know, you would add on the tip of your brush. This is where it's starting to look more painterly, where you actually go in and you're using the direct color without a whole lot of water, just adding a little bit more red in certain sections. We are almost done. Oh, wow. John Paul, that looks amazing. Oh my goodness, your darks look really good. Wow. Incredible. So our last step is going to be adding a mixture of blue and black together to get a dark blue. So So I'm taking my blue here. So if you have like a darker blue, you know, again, on whatever set you're using, you can use that. But if not, you're going to mix the blue and the black. And if you want to mix a little bit of purple in there, you can too. Because you're going to get like a dark grape color. And that color is for in between the grapes. So that's going to look something like this. So I'm going in, and the parts that are, you know, the darker parts of the grape, or I should say, you know, kind of like the background, you know, when the grapes are kind of touching each other and they're creating some shading, some shadowing. Sometimes you're kind of adding it to a little bit of the grape itself. Oh, John Paul, I'm sorry. I just saw your message. You are done. Let me see. Oh, wait, you're still working. Okay. Can't wait to see these. Yeah, you don't have to put a whole lot of this dark, you know, the dark part. You just want it to be a bit subtle, you know, adding some darker shading in between your grapes. And then sometimes, you know, adding a little bit, you know, like see here, I'm just adding just a little bit of that dark color mixed in at the edge of where it meets the grape. And you can go back and layer in more purple later on if you want. Thank you, Trisha. Thank you again. So kind. Mwah. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording at this point.